So before the video begins, you should probably go on ahead and subscribe to the channel. It helps your boy out tremendously. And it's free. And we love free. Leave a like, comment, and make sure to hit the notification bell to see when my videos go live. And with that out of the way, onto the video. Today we're going to delve into DanDaDan's first arc known as the Turbo Granny arc. It's the first 8 chapters in the manga. A relatively short arc, but nevertheless a fantastic opener to what is an amazing series. I briefly talked about DanDaDan in my 5 manga you should read now video. Give that video a watch, it's pretty good. And I saw a good amount of the comments talking about how much they love DanDaDan, and I want to jump further into this series and talk more about it. DanDaDan starts out with our main character Momo Ayase, a high school student, and she's being pressed by her boyfriend for money. Momo's confused by this, and then her boyfriend's just like, "Yeah, I'm trying to clap cheeks, but you gotta pay for the hotel." Momo responds to this like any other rational person would in this situation by delivering a swift kick to her man's head. The form on this kick is excellent, by the way. You see the precision. So the two tussle for a bit and her boyfriend overpowers her and kicks her to the curb because our girl has standards. Momo meets up with her friends during school, and it's here that we notice that Momo has a specific type of guy she likes to go after. She likes old-fashioned men like Ken Takakura. Now, for the people that don't know about Ken Takakura, he's this prolific actor from Japan who got notoriety from a film called The Yakuza. He's an extremely important figure in Japan for redefining what it is to be a man in the post-war era days. He was the very definition of masculinity for Japan and played such an important role in that. We have Burt Reynolds and Sean Connery, but Japan had Ken fucking Takakura. With this in mind, we already have the basis for Momo as a person. She even stated that the only reason why she was with her now ex was because he reminded her of Ken Takakura. Keep this in mind for how she views men, because it'd be very interesting to see her view get flipped. Anyway, Momo mopes around thinking she'll never meet a man quite like Takakura. Momo spots this dude just sitting there minding his business, and she sees other people, and she looks at the other people in the classroom being clowns, and she's still harboring those feelings of being annoyed from earlier. Our boy runs up to Momo and is like, "Oh, I know what you're coming up to me about." And my man just randomly brings out Obama going to Mars. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the introduction to Best Boy Okuran. Our boy Okuran has a fascination for the occult and anything related to aliens. He just starts blabbering about his extensive knowledge of aliens to Momo, and she couldn't care less about any of it. Momo tells Okuran that she doesn't believe in aliens, but what she does believe in is ghosts. And this is when these two have their differences. Both of these characters have very strong beliefs in the supernatural, but none of them believe in the other. Momo talks about ghosts and their effects on people, and Okuran writes it off as just normal human occurrences. So the two of them make a bet. If the other can prove that what they believe in exists, then that person will be the other's errand boy or girl. And with this is our inciting incident for the chapter. Momo's location is this rundown abandoned hospital. She mockingly talks about being scared on the search for the UFO. Okuran's spot is this tunnel. Man is rightfully terrified of going in here, and Momo's over here talking shit to him, but she opens up to him and talks about her family and her upbringing and how much her grandmother means to her and her relation to ghosts. Okuran's feeling the conversation and doesn't feel nearly as nervous anymore until he stumbles across Turbo Granny. And she says this to him: "See, a person like me is not sucking random titties in a tunnel, but not from whatever the hell this is supposed to be." So Okuran bolts out of here thinking it's some old woman trying to get her well wet, but Momo tells him that if she outruns him, he'll be cursed. Momo's on her way to Okuran, but these 3 aliens are in her way. The aliens chase her and start tearing her clothes apart. Now, if shit was a while before, then it's definitely taken things and went to the damn moon with it. So Momo's trapped to this contraption, and the aliens explain to her that they only reproduce through cloning tech, and for them to get the reproductive functions back, they need to steal bananas. Yes, you heard me. Bananas. So they want to do some awful shit to Momo, but then Turbo Granny pulls up and we find out that Okuran was cursed by her. The aliens transform and now the fight's on. The aliens pin down Okuran and he spills his life to them. He talks about how much he believed in aliens and he wanted to befriend them, but they never showed up. This scene alone shows how much what Okuran believes in matters to him. He sat through being bullied, wishing for that one day an alien would come or something would accept him for who he is, and Momo was that person for him, and he's willing to do anything for her. Now for some, people will question this and be like, he just met this girl. But with characters like Okuran, this was a moment he was waiting for. It's very telling because in this instance, he was more than just himself. Literally. And no matter the consequence, this moment mattered to him so much. It really shows you the kind of person he is and his resolve for such a timid looking guy. Momo cheers him on, but he's still kinda getting waxed by the aliens. We then get a flashback peering into Momo's childhood, and she's undergoing a little training arc to let out her Q. She ends up focusing on it and unleashes the power she has within her. The aliens fucked up, overloading her brain with psychokinesis, which allowed her to unlock her powers. Momo channels her inner Jin Mori and starts kicking these aliens around, but surprise surprise, they were in a UFO the whole time. Okuran, still under Turbo Granny's control, pounces on Momo, but she uses her power and separates the two. Unfortunately for Okuran, Turbo Granny has his meat and won't give it back unless he arrives back at the tunnel. After all that goes down, Momo believes in aliens, and Okuran believes in ghosts. Okuran is still cursed, but Momo is helping him to get it under wraps. The two have a talk about the events that just happened, and Momo asks Okuran what his name is, and he goes, Ken Takakura. And that ends chapter 1. And what a first chapter it is. In one chapter, the absurdity of the series is shown and the tone has been established very quickly. Sometimes series take a bit of time to find its footing for what it is, but DanDaDan managed to achieve this in its first chapter. It helps that the creator of this helped assist Tatsuki Fujimoto on Chainsaw Man, because the two share similarities of this absurdity that it has, but also ground themselves in a sense of reality. That in itself is truly special. I wanna take you for a ride. This chapter immediately starts off with Momo flat out telling this man she doesn't believe him, and then brands him as Okuran. As they're walking through the night, it becomes morning, and it's established that Turbo Granny can't appear due to it being morning. Okuran gets into Momo's home. I prefer bursting the flames, of course. And the two of them get to talking again. And Okuran opens up about this chance he's getting with Momo, and he has this very low opinion of himself. He feels like he's not worthy enough to be in the presence of her, but then she tells him the real reason why he's not making friends. It's not from a place of annoyance or trying to talk down to him, but generally giving him a piece of advice. She wants him to open up to her and to talk to her like he would a friend. For such an exterior that Momo puts up, she's already very perceptive of Okuran and cares enough about him early on to want to carry on conversation with her normally. These two are going to share even better moments later on, just you wait. Wholesomeness aside, Momo hears the doorbell outside and she specifies that they have two at home, one for humans and the other for spirits. Momo needs to put the charm up, but they're being trapped in by the walls around them. This mysterious black fog surrounds them, and then this shit appears. DanDaDan is already reaching Gantz territory with the enemy types these two have to face, and we're only in chapter 2, and this enemy also wants the Schmeat. Also, Momo and Okuran running is some of my favorite things to see in this series. Just look at these two goobers sprinting like this. We find out from Okuran that it's another alien called the Floodwoods Monster. I mentioned it before, but you're going to be seeing some wild aliens coming in this story, but the design of this alien is really cool and also gets complimented by Yukinobu Tatsu's design. Always gets across how creepy and unsettling these entities are. Okuran also lets us in on some more info. This alien that they're encountering now is a part of the same aliens that attacked them from before. Okuran gets to attack it, and every time Okuran transforms, it's always a sight to see. The art makes him look amazing and very menacing. The amount of detail in his face, even up to his forehead with the veins being shown, is a nice touch. Here comes a fun drawback to Okuran's transformation. Man essentially becomes a sad boy when it happens. Usually in shonens, our characters are either filled with immense rage or have a calm heart when they transform, but Okuran looks like he just got done listening to the Guts theme on loop. This also plays into the kind of humor DanDaDan has, whether it's being subversive or leaning into how ridiculous the situation is. The Floodwoods monster goes in the offensive, but Okuran weaves that shit. Unfortunately for him, he starts to hack something up, and the monster takes advantage. Okuran's body still isn't accustomed to Turbo Granny's control. On the other hand though, Momo comes to a realization that the monster is essentially a sumo wrestler. She then conjures up a plan believing that if it abides by sumo rules, then it has to be defeated by them as well. With their strategy at hand, it looks like all things are working until Momo gets made into some wall art. The monster just starts wailing on her until they make it out of the archway, and she slaps that charm right on him and burns to a crisp. The two rejoice, and then Momo faints with Turbo Granny about to eat her.
Just go for it!
Chapter 3 begins, but it doesn't immediately pick up after the events of the last chapter. It starts off with a psychic by the name of Dodoria Santa talking to this idol, and the segment isn't going as planned. Dodoria Santa gets in a cab and the driver asks if she's an actual psychic, to which she doesn't answer. Momo's about to get eaten in some very precarious shots that I don't want YouTube to rain down on me for, but then we get blessed with the introduction of Momo's grandmother Seiko Ayase. I'm gonna let this panel sit because this is a specimen right here. Just look at her massive abilities. Turbo Granny thinks she's got the upper hand on Seiko until she gets put in a barrier and lit on fire. We see who's really in control here. One of DanDaDan's strengths is the fact that you instantly understand a character from their first appearance. Yukinobu Tatsu gets across everything he needs to as soon as they enter the series. Another trait he shares with Tatsuki Fujimoto, who's the master of doing the exact same thing. Momo awakens. She speaks to Seiko about the spirit they had a run-in with, but Seiko throws back what Momo said to her before about not being an actual spirit medium. It's funny because that's really how family gets. You say anything to them, and they'll hold on to the one really negative thing you said and hold it over on you until you admit that you are wrong about it, which is exactly what happens here. Momo runs out to see if Okuran's safe. We start to see how she really feels about him. She takes his feelings into account and feels really bad for him, but is relieved to see him fine. Seiko meets up with Momo, and Momo tells Seiko that she has powers now, and the two talk about Turbo Granny. She goes through her lore and how much destruction she wreaked over Japan. Seiko tells her straight up not to mess with Turbo Granny because there's too much smoke to handle, but Momo is going to do something about it anyway because Ken Takakura would do something about it. Seiko outlines that the only way to be able to beat Turbo Granny is to outrun her, and that Okuran is the only one that can be able to do that. Seiko pretty much gives Okuran the Saitama workout regimen in order to be able to beat Turbo Granny, and that Momo has to train her psychic abilities. The two have to undergo a training arc. Okuran wants to give it his all so that he's able to fully protect Momo without any concern, and also to continue being her friend. And remember that idol we saw in the beginning of the chapter? Yeah, Seiko managed to get him to say everything she wanted him to say. This woman's so cool, man.
Get ready for the next battle.
Chapter 4 starts with a very funny dilemma. Okuran needs to use the bathroom but can't because he would need Momo to keep him in view in order for the suppression to work. We also get to see how Momo's psychic powers work and how she's only able to grab auras that reside within people and living things. Seiko gives Momo a tip and tells her about her over-reliance on her vision, and that she needs to be able to feel his aura with touch instead of just only using her eyes. Only thing is that she's failing miserably at it. Now it's a mad dash to get to the bathroom with Momo and Seiko in tow, and this section is just ridiculous in the best way. The three of them just get into this impromptu race and Momo busts her ass on the way there. We find out that Momo still has the immense power she had from the first chapter, but she has to train to get to that point again. Kind of like in games when you start off beastly but then hit a roadblock and the whole game is just getting back to where you need to be. After this discussion, Seiko is halted in place in her nosebleeds, but this is the work of Turbo Granny. Turbo Granny explains that her curse is so powerful that any person Okuran sees, she can essentially kill. She gives Momo an ultimatum that she'll go to the tunnel or she'll start picking people off at random. Seiko takes action against this and prepares a ceremony for Okuran and Momo, giving them protection against spirits. Also, a thing to mention is that if you didn't notice already, but DanDaDan likes to reference a lot of pop culture. Whether you get them all? Probably not, but I'll do my best to explain them. Seiko makes a reference to strong style wrestling, which is a type of wrestling that was popularized and originated from Japan in the 70s. It's a style of wrestling that looks real enough to constitute as an actual fight. It can be downright brutal to watch, but that's what makes it so cool. She brings it up in relation to why Momo and Okuran are wearing the garbs that they are. Then we get this panel of Seiko embracing Momo and asking her not to die in this quest. Seiko, like Momo, have this very tough exterior but have moments where they let that go, and for a very brave and fearless person like Seiko is, it shows how grave this situation is and how much of a threat Turbo Granny is. But now our two protagonists are set on confronting her.
Yeah!
We're now more than midway through the Turbo Granny arc and our two heroes arrive at the tunnel. They go back and forth over who gets to go in first and fight her because both of them are terrified. Okuran devises a plan to lead her outside the city to get her away from the bound spirit, but they have a little problem to deal with. Turbo Granny cuts off both exits and Momo's attacks do nothing against her. Okuran transforms but immediately reverts back to his normal self, and that's due to Granny giving him back his meat. But Momo has something cooking. She challenges Turbo Granny to a race, but not an actual race. She's going to play tag with her instead, and to count to 10 minutes so they have the advantage. Turbo Granny finesses this rule and counts to 10 minutes very fast cause Momo never specified on it. She's playing by genie rules. She starts to count for Okuran, but Okuran makes the MVP play and actually starts sucking her. Whoa! He's a better man than me. I would've just chosen death at that point, honestly. Okuran's idea manages to succeed because Turbo Granny can't summon any power, so she chooses to possess him again. Now Momo gets the opportunity to be able to touch Okuran's aura without even seeing it. With this, he's able to return to his normal self. But then the bound spirit shows up.
Danger.
First things first, I said it before, but I love the panels where these two are running, and this is no different. This spread captures the energy that DanDaDan has to offer. So Momo and Okuron are now being chased by this giant crab, but they have Turbo Granny with them. The twist is now Okuron can use her power without her having to activate it herself. They end up veering off the road, but Okuron channels his inner Chun-Li and does the spinning bird kick to get across. Of course, because he did not spend the meter for the EX version, he ends up falling to the ground. The crab gains on him, and a funny thing about this is that Momo and Okuron can see this giant crab, but regular people can't, so it looks like they're just speeding through the streets just like this. So Momo, being the queen of improv, tells Okuron to head straight for the hot springs, and they boil his ass. But of course, things are never this easy, and the two are being chased by all the spirits in Shono City, and they've got them surrounded.
Let's get it on!
Okuron blitzes through the crowd, but because they were moving so fast, Momo loses her grip on Turbo Granny, so now she's acting independently again. Turbo Granny combines herself with the crab and have now taken this form, but Momo grabs a hold of a train and creates some distance between the two. Turbo Granny catches up to the train, but she gets led into a trap. Seiko had a whole setup ready, and Turbo Granny gets lit the fuck up.
I lived, you died. I lived, and you died.
Momo sees these girls that all look like her, but they're all different people. Reading this the first time, I thought it was Momo in different clothes, but that wasn't the case. The art style just has similar faces for people, but Turbo Granny has been beaten. Seiko explains that what Momo saw when she saw those girls disappear, that they were the victims of several murders. She states that spirit mediums have always been on the watch for Turbo Granny, but she always had a specific set of means to interact with spirits. Seiko also lays out the rules for the living and the dead. The dead can't harm the living, and the same for the living against the dead. For example, mocking their territory will anger them. These are very simple rules that the story has laid out for us, which tells us how these stories are going to play out going forward. The gang celebrates their victory by eating the crab they just clapped up, which I do as well, because that's good food that we can't waste out here in these streets. Okuron complains about eating the crab that was just recently killed, but Seiko asks him a very, very, very important question. Does he really have his Schmeat back? And she asks Okuron to show it to her. Shit, well if you insist. Okuron goes home and tells Momo goodbye. She thinks about him saying that for longer than anyone should, but she's figuring out what to say, but then tells him that she'll see him tomorrow. Okuron blushes and leaves. This is a really sweet moment between these two, even though it's rather small. This whole ordeal has drawn them a lot closer than before. The following day, Okuron is losing his mind over how to talk to Momo, which is cute because he's still not used to this whole friendship deal, especially with a girl, so he's feeling a little flustered. But Momo waits at the gate. Okuron, being the guy he is, immediately thinks she can't be waiting for him. That little moment is funny because I'm sure dudes get like this whenever they become friends with a really attractive girl at that. We always put ourselves down thinking she can't be wasting time on us, especially when they're in high school. But lucky for Okuron, she actually was waiting for him, and she asked what took him so long, and that concludes the Turbo Granny arc. This is a very great starting arc for the series. Our two main characters have a very good dynamic going. It's always entertaining seeing Momo and Okuron banter because it feels very genuine, and you can feel the awkwardness between the two, even more so when we get to the next arc. DanDaDan is one of my favorite series to come out of Shonen Jump, and I highly recommend anyone to check it out. But let me know what you guys think. Have a favorite panel from DanDaDan? Do you have a favorite moment? Tell me in the comments down below, and I'll be seeing you beautiful people next time.